I see a couple guys, regulars already in the chat on Twitch, on YouTube. What's going on, boys? What's happening, man? I know we might have a girl out there too. I don't know what our demo is right now. But all right, man. So guys, welcome to the show. This show is called Out of Line at the Bike with Joey Ingram. My name's Joey Ingram, aka Chicago Joey. Joining me today on the show is a young man who's been playing a lot of Live at the Bike recently. A man who's already, I don't know, he's been playing for a week or two, but he somehow has played some of the most interesting hands I've seen at Live at the Bike. A man who enjoys overbetting.
And Garrett double pot jams.
A man who enjoys putting a lot of money in with the 6-3 offsuit to try to make a guy fold an ace-queen.
And Garrett is going to bluff shove. This is sick.
A man who's been playing high-stakes poker for many, many, many years.
Garrett's live experience playing high-stakes no limit showing up here.
I was watching his videos on Deuces Cracked back in the day in 2000, and man, this had to be like 2008, 2009. I was playing 10 cent, 25 cent, 20 cent, 50 cent, trying to make it for myself. This guy was still playing fucking crazy back then. He's still playing crazy now. He's a reality TV guy too, man. He was on Survivor, and I feel like there's kind of so much there in between. But man, we're joined by my buddy G-Man. What's up, Garrett? Welcome to the show, kid.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Happy to be here, and obviously, just like every other poker player, watch the vast majority of your shows, so it's quite an honor to be on myself. I'm looking forward to it.
Dude, man. By the way, guys, this episode sponsored by Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels whiskey. Make sure you guys check it out. Jack Daniels is going to be sponsoring this podcast. I think Garrett's got a Corona over there. Also, Corona is always, of course, a longtime sponsor of the show.
Maybe,
Corona.
Maybe throw me a 12-pack or something. That's all I'm looking for, like 12 beers,
Guys, please send Garrett a Corona, and I'm sure the players would love it if Garrett had a Corona while he played poker to give him a chance. So yeah, guys, this show every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be having guests on here too as well over time. And also Live at the Bike streams every day at 9 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, Feldman, I know you want me to get this right. But they stream Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Cash games too. And Garrett's been playing a lot on this Friday 25-50 game. And last Friday, what was it last Friday? It was 25-50, 100, 200 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've never played 25-50 there. To be honest, like I probably wouldn't play that game. It's every time I played, it's at least 25-51, straddling the 2 sometimes. And then we've had at least 100, if not 200 ante every game except last week, and I think that'll be the only week that's the case too. If I have Ryan correct on that, and just a little PSA for the public. In terms of no limit games, like antes are just so mandatory, people haven't solved no limit. Like with antes, it obviously creates like a ton of action. We put ante in a game and a big one, let's say if you're playing like a 25-51, $200 ante on the big blind, and then you have 3 blinds, like, all these guys trying to GTO it up, like from just whatever, like, I mean, they're going to struggle because it's a totally different world out there.
Yo, Papi, can you ask him where he gets his money from? Now, guys, I don't know if Garrett wants to tell you where he got his money from, but I'm gonna give you a big secret. He gets his money from charming ladies. He's a professional. He has a sugar mama. He takes care of them. That's why he keeps himself in good shape. That's why he's such a beautiful man. That's right. No, sorry. I'm sorry, Garrett. That's not you. My bad, Garrett. That's not you.
No, that's me. That's 80% of it. But the other 20% is I'm a world-class pigeon trainer, actually.
Interesting. Pigeons. So like Luke Short's pigeons, like fucking like the donk pigeons, or like what kind of pigeons?
No, like the actual birds. Yeah, like so they bring me on set like in a bunch of different movies, and I mean I worked my way up from the bottom, but these days like the biggest blockbuster production, they have me just making sure the pigeons do what they need to do. So that's kind of where all the money's come from.
I think there's one director I know that focuses a lot on those movies. Like Face Off had a lot of pigeons. Whoever the director of Face Off was, I know he's big on bringing pigeons in. So. I feel like maybe we've seen you do something like that in the past.
You have. I don't want to throw any directors under the bus or whatnot, but yeah, that's where the money comes from. But in all seriousness, I think I love that. I love so many people like always ask me like, where do you get money? Like for every person who says like,
wait a second. They're asking you where you get your money from. Do they think you're a fucking idiot or something like that? And like they can't imagine you made the money from poker? Like why are so many people asking you where you got your money from?
Dude, there's no question that like brings me more joy than that, and this is sort of maybe my mindset compared to like many other poker players. Like if someone says like, what do you do for work or whatever, it's like it's the best compliment one can give me, to be honest. because it just shows like the way I conduct myself at the table with like irrelevant of my poker play, but also probably many of the spewy things I do at the poker table. Like, I'm just the opposite of like, the grinder and the headphones,
Right.
So yeah, so I mean, I love that question, and for every guy who goes, Garrett's a crusher, Garrett's a beast, or whatever poker terminology people use, I have 10 other guys that go, this guy's fucking terrible, and I love it. I absolutely love that,
So obviously I know you're a very competitive guy. So do you like that because it feels like you feel like it makes you want to compete more? So when someone says, hey, dude, you're a fucking idiot, you're like, okay, I'm going to show you that I'm not an idiot, that I am good, or what do you feel like you get from maybe comments like that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I am very competitive, but no, it doesn't play out in that way. Like, to me, that just says like I'm doing my job, like in terms of like, giving off like the image that I'm not a particularly strong poker player, and that's really what it's all about. Poker is such an interesting game, especially live poker at the highest levels, because it's just so important to try and get into, the best games that like, if a lot of people think you suck, like, I just think that's great. And, I think it's a very human desire to feel appreciated, right? And because work and like sort of, American culture especially is so achievement oriented, right? It makes it so like people in all industries, and poker's no exception, they deeply crave approval. They deeply crave sort of people to think they're good at poker, and maybe that was a part of who I was, a decade ago as a poker player, but I've been playing this game for so long now that I could care less about that, so.
Yeah, I feel like, back in the day, you definitely saw that way more, where people did crave, like they wanted to be known as good poker players. But I guess it is a sign when you've been around poker now. There's guys been around 10 years. You've been around 10 years, over 10 years. I've been around over 10 years. Once you're around over 10 years, you're doing something right, man. Whatever it is that you're doing, okay? Maybe you're good at borrowing money, but whatever it is, you're doing it very well if you're around 10 years. Right. So I think with that just time comes the respect you get from your peers, which is something that was always important to me back in the day when I was playing. Like, I wanted my peers to, respect me, and I wanted to be proud to be a poker player and be good at poker. But then as the years go on and on, I guess you do start to worry about that less. Once you have that inner self-confidence of knowing, like once you've been successful for so long, it don't fucking matter what people are saying, man. To me, it don't matter anymore. If someone's like, oh, you suck at I'm like, I don't care, man. It don't really matter to me what people say now. So I feel like you probably have that same thing. I mean, you've been doing well for a long time. You've had high skill level for a long time now. So if someone's going to say, hey, dude, you suck, it's like, okay. I mean, what is it?
Yeah. Like I said, I actually like comments like that. But I think you bring up an interesting point, sort of just like in a general way. I think the vast majority of people who find financial independence feel the same way that you and I do about it, but some do not. And these are the guys that blow my mind. There's some people I can think of, non-professional poker players that just have like all of the money in the world, and they go and, I'll play poker games with them, and they just seriously want to sit and talk to me about like how much money they have, what girls they pull, like whatever other things that like, are highly indicative of small dick syndrome, and these guys blow my mind. I'm not mad at them for it, but you feel for someone who like has accomplished so much, but yet feels so small to the point that they always need to be like trying to validate themselves with other people, and I think it's a tough way to live your life, and I think it's a suboptimal way to run your poker business. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting subject on its own. A lot of people in the chat, obviously, they're talking about Survivor, kid, and you were on Survivor, and I don't know, man, you got a little out of line on Survivor, Poppy. You got a little out of line on there, so you want to chat a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the first thing I'll say is like I sucked at Survivor. Like it didn't play out the way I wanted to, and at the time and in the months following, I was actually wildly disappointed in it. I thought like being asked to be on the show was like an incredibly unique opportunity that like I really wanted to take advantage of, and so I actually like worked very hard prepping for the show on a physical, strategic level. And once I got out there, it just didn't play out the way I wanted to. In my own defense, like, Survivor is always going to be able to edit any person any way they want. Mm-hmm. The reality is when you're on a deserted island, starving to death, being filmed by 50 cameramen 24/7, like, if they want to make you look like Zeus, like, they will, and if they want to make you look like OJ, like, they will, OJ. And so, obviously, my exit from the show was particularly dramatic, and they're trying to create storylines. And by the way, this isn't me shitting on, like, CBS production. Like, they're making a show, and for me to expect their objectives to be anything but make an entertaining show would be, very, very wrong, right? So I was never upset with CBS, but I was certainly edited in a way that kind of, highlighted the dumbest of things I said. And I mean, I got to tell you, production, I mean, they're so good at their job. I had this girl who was my producer, and she had this incredible way of making you think it was just you and her, like, no camera, and she was like your therapist, and you could just, like, talk to her about everything as I'm, like, starving to death, And so you almost, like, you really do forget the cameras were there despite only being out there for 6 days. But anyway, so I was the second one eliminated. But with all of that said, like, after I got over the initial grief of, and I really didn't care about anything except winning. So the fact that I was second out didn't really matter. Mm-hmm. But I really deeply wanted to win and really worked hard to win. So that was like the majority of the pain I dealt with. But I look back on it now, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Like, it was an incredible experience. Like, I can still remember so many moments. Like, when we first flew in, like, on a helicopter, and you're just flying over, like, the jungles of the Philippines, like, you and 5 other people that, like, you've seen in auditions and, like, pregame but have never spoken with. Like, I can remember, like, that was like a 30-minute helicopter ride, and I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. It was absolutely incredible. And you land, and then there's, like, hundreds of cameras and producers, and you're like, shit, this is real, and I loved it, and I loved everything about it. I loved Ponderosa after, just getting drunk at, like, our little resort for 2 weeks. I loved, like, the people I went with, like, on our vacation in Thailand for 3 weeks after. And so I've always, like, I look back at that experience despite sort of my poor play with very fond memories.
I mean, you were looking pretty ripped in there, man. I don't know. You mentioned you kind of you mentioned that you got in the best shape that you could, and obviously that's not going to work when you have a certain diet going into it, and then you go to a diet where you're not eating anything. So you're like a hungry man as it is, and now you can't eat anything, and it certainly affected the way that you were thinking during that period of time.
Yeah, another great point. Like, in a series of poor plays, like, this was just, like, yet another one. Like, mm-hmm. I had thought that, like, already, I mean, I've always, like, been very much into fitness, and particularly in that time of my life, I was, like, laser focused on it. And that was probably part of the reason, like, why I was recruited at a bar in the first place. Like, they found me, like, at a bar in Venice. And then, like, when I told them I was a poker player, I think that's, like, what sealed it, because they had already had JRB on, and I think that they were very interested in poker players and players who were strategic in nature, But to answer your question more directly, it was dumb as fuck to go in there that lean, and, like, my body and my muscles, like, just immediately started eating at themselves, and it totally affected me mentally. Like, it wasn't like I, like, had a breakdown or something like that, but I just, like, was not myself, Right. When you go from just, like, training, like, 4 hours a day, like, eating 8 perfectly clean meals a day, to no longer being able to exercise, which was, that in itself was such a big deal, not being able to exercise, and, like, eating, like, a cup of rice or a half cup of rice twice a day. Like, it was no picnic, but like I said, I don't regret any of that, like, at this point. And it was just fun, so.